Maria Dela Cruz thought she could play with power. Sheikh Khalid Al Mansoor made sure she burned for it. The crime scene presents a new page of crime, a new mystery, a new shock case. Maria Dela Cruz had always dreamed of a better life, one far away from the crowded streets of Manila and the endless hustle that came with barely surviving. When she landed a job as a VIP hostess in one of Dubai's most exclusive clubs, she thought she had finally stepped into her destiny. The lights were bright, the money was fast, and the men were powerful. That's where she first met Sheikh Khalid Al Mansoor, tall, commanding, with the kind of presence that made the whole room turn silent. He wasn't just rich, he was royal money, old money, the kind that didn't chase people. People chased it. But that night, he chased her. Their connection was instant, electric, dangerous. Maria wasn't naive, but the attention from a man like him was intoxicating. Within weeks, he had her set up in a secret penthouse overlooking the city skyline. Expensive perfumes, designer dresses, and luxury cars became her new normal. Every visit came with gifts, but also rules. No photos, no public appearances, no mention of his name. Maria thought she could handle the secrecy. After all, love always comes with conditions. But something about Khalid's control was different. He wasn't just possessive, he was obsessive. The more he gave her, the more he wanted to own her. She didn't realize she was becoming another one of his kept secrets, tucked between layers of power, money, and deceit. But Maria wasn't like his other women. She kept her phone close, camera ready, capturing moments she thought might one day matter. Behind her soft smile and glamorous life, a quiet plan was forming. She didn't know how it would end, but one thing was certain. The night she met Sheikh Khalid Al Mansoor was the night she stopped being invisible and started becoming dangerous. Fatima Al Mansoor had learned long ago that silence was safer than confrontation. As the Sheikh's first wife, she had seen everything. The lies, the late-night calls, the trips labeled business. Yet when Maria Dela Cruz appeared, something in the air shifted. Fatima felt it before she even saw her. The whispers among the palace staff grew louder, the perfume on her husband's robes changed, and the faint lipstick smudge on his collar wasn't hers. One afternoon, a new woman began visiting the palace under the title of social media assistant, helping the Sheikh with charity campaigns. Fatima watched her closely, young, beautiful, foreign, with a glow that didn't come from makeup but from someone being desired. Maria carried herself with confidence, unaware that every step she took was being measured by a woman who had built her life on endurance. Fatima knew her husband's patterns too well. The sudden generosity, the secrecy, the new phone always locked. She had lived this cycle before, but this time it cut deeper. The Sheikh wasn't just distracted, he was obsessed. The tension seeped into every corner of the palace. Fatima's nights became sleepless, haunted by visions of betrayal replaying behind her eyes. Still, she didn't confront him. She smiled through dinners, hosted guests, and played the role of the perfect wife, while inside she mapped every detail like a detective. She started collecting small clues, hotel receipts, perfume bottles, stray hairs on his suit. The truth became undeniable when she overheard one of the guards whisper about the Filipina at the penthouse. Fatima's world cracked, but her face didn't show it. She realized that the Sheikh's secrets had finally taken physical form, walking through her home in designer heels. And she quietly vowed that this time, silence wouldn't be her prison, it would be her weapon. Maria Dela Cruz had grown comfortable living two lives, one bathed in luxury and another built on quiet suspicion. The more Sheikh Khalid controlled her movements, the more she learned to collect proof of her own existence in his world. It started small, a few selfies in hotel rooms, a recording of his voice whispering promises, a video reflection of his hand sliding diamonds across her skin. At first, it was vanity, proof that she wasn't just a secret. But soon, it became insurance. She knew the Sheikh's power stretched far beyond money. He could make people disappear, and that thought haunted her every time she looked out from her penthouse balcony at the endless desert. Her best friend, Lina Ortega, was the only one she trusted. They had met years back working in the same club, two dreamers chasing security in a city that didn't care who it consumed. When Maria showed Lina the files she'd been saving, the videos, the messages, the receipts, Lena's face went pale. She told Maria to delete everything before it destroyed her, but Maria only laughed, saying she was too deep to turn back. She called it her golden ticket, her backup plan if Khalid ever betrayed her. But what she didn't realize was that every recording was a fuse waiting to be lit. Lena warned her again and again, yet Maria's confidence had turned into arrogance. She believed she was untouchable, protected by beauty and secrets. She started talking loosely, dropping hints to other women at the club about her royal boyfriend. Each word she spoke chipped away at her safety, drawing invisible attention. Maria thought she was building leverage. In reality, she was stacking evidence against herself. One careless file, one reckless boast, one digital confession at a time. Omar had been Sheikh Khalid's bodyguard for nearly a decade, a silent shadow trained to obey without question. He had seen the Sheikh's temper before, short bursts of fury quickly masked by charm. But the situation with Maria Dela Cruz felt different. There was a tension in the air that made even the palace guards whisper. Omar had been ordered to keep an eye on her, follow her movements, and report everything. What he found made his stomach twist. Maria wasn't just another mistress. She was documenting the entire affair. Hidden cameras, voice recordings, screenshots. She had a full archive of evidence that could destroy a man like Khalid. When Omar informed him, the Sheikh's face turned stone cold. No yelling, no cursing, just a dangerous silence that said more than words ever could. Khalid's pride was legendary, his image flawless, his ego built like armor. The idea that a woman, especially one without power or status, could hold something over him was intolerable. He began driving himself to her penthouse late at night, breaking his own rule of always having a driver. That's when Omar knew it wasn't about love anymore. It was about control. Each visit grew shorter, sharper, more intense. The Sheikh started showing signs of paranoia, checking his phone constantly, asking if anyone had seen Maria's posts or heard gossip. His hands shook when he lit his cigars, his laughter came forced. He told Omar to start cleaning up loose ends, a phrase Omar had learned to fear. The Sheikh began making late-night calls to unknown numbers, his voice low and clipped. Omar followed orders, but deep down he knew something irreversible was coming. When a man like Sheikh Khalid Al Mansoor felt cornered, someone always paid the price, and Omar had a sick feeling he already knew who that someone would be. Maria Dela Cruz had reached her breaking point. The luxury, the lies, the loneliness, it all started to feel like a gilded cage, and she was done playing the quiet mistress. One night, after another argument that ended with the Sheikh storming out, Maria decided to show him she wasn't just another disposable secret. She sent him a message that would ignite everything. Asterisk, I want what I deserve, or everyone gets the truth. Asterisk, the words were short, but they carried the weight of every recording, every stolen moment, every broken promise. Sheikh Khalid read the message while sitting in his private study, and for the first time in years, his pulse spiked in fear instead of rage. He offered her cash, more than she'd ever seen, but she refused. He offered her a villa, a car, even Emirati citizenship, but Maria wanted none of it. What she wanted was recognition. She wanted to be acknowledged, to stop living in the shadows while he flaunted his public perfection. Her defiance wounded his pride deeper than any scandal could. Khalid had built his empire on respect and control, and Maria had just threatened both. His calls turned cold, his tone sharper. He started talking like a man planning war instead of reconciliation. Maria, thinking she was still in control, didn't see the storm gathering behind his silence. To her, it was just a negotiation, leverage, not danger. But to Khalid, it was betrayal. Every message from her phone made his jaw tighten. Every demand made his eyes darker. Somewhere deep inside, the switch had flipped. This wasn't about love or revenge anymore. It was about erasing a mistake that dared to challenge him. And while Maria believed she was finally reclaiming her power, the Sheikh was already deciding how to take it back permanently. Maria Dela Cruz sat in her penthouse, surrounded by luxury that now felt like evidence. Every piece of jewelry, every designer bag, every whispered confession carried a shadow of danger. The Sheikh had gone quiet, too quiet, and Maria knew silence from a man like him meant planning. She decided to move first. Over the course of one long night, she gathered everything. The videos, voice notes, hotel receipts, messages, and photos, and compiled them into one digital folder labeled Asterisk for the wives. Asterisk, it was her ultimate insurance policy, her way of saying she wouldn't go down quietly. She uploaded copies to cloud drives, encrypted emails, and even an anonymous server. Then she sent one version to her best friend, Lena Ortega, with a short message. Asterisk, keep this safe, just in case anything happens. Asterisk, Lena begged her to delete everything, terrified of what Khalid might do if he found out. But Maria brushed her off with a cold confidence that came from being too far gone to turn back. She had started to believe she was untouchable, that the Sheikh's fear of exposure made her invincible. But the arrogance blinded her to the dangers circling closer. She began dropping cryptic hints on social media, posting filtered pictures of luxury cars, captions about royal secrets, and mysterious emojis that only fueled speculation. Her followers thought she was teasing a new lifestyle brand, but those who knew her saw a woman tempting fate. Each post was like a spark near gasoline. Meanwhile, Maria barely slept, replaying her recordings like trophies. She didn't notice the unfamiliar car parked across the street or the same man at the cafe 3 days in a row. While she thought she was protecting herself, she was only tightening the noose. The Sheikh didn't need to search for her anymore. She was already broadcasting her location to the world. Omar had seen the Sheikh unravel before, but never like this. The man who once commanded entire rooms with quiet authority now spent nights pacing his private office, chain-smoking and muttering under his breath about betrayal. Maria's name had become a curse, a wound he couldn't stop picking. Omar wanted to step back, but there was no safe distance from a man like Sheikh Khalid when his pride was on fire. Then came the moment Omar couldn't ignore, an order delivered with a calmness that chilled him. Make sure she doesn't cause problems. That was it. No further explanation. Omar knew exactly what that meant. Torn between fear and guilt, he did something unthinkable. He slipped a handwritten note to Fatima Al Mansoor, the Sheikh's first wife, a woman he respected more than anyone in that palace. The note was short, just 6 words. Asterisk, he's losing control. Be careful, madam. Asterisk, when Fatima read it, her hands trembled. She had known something dark was brewing, but hadn't imagined it had reached this point. She had lived through his tempers, endured his arrogance, but this was different. The Sheikh wasn't angry. He was desperate, and desperation made him dangerous. That evening, Fatima watched him across the dinner table, his eyes cold and distant, his words mechanical. He didn't eat, didn't look at her, just stared into nothing as if plotting a storm in silence. She realized the woman he once obsessed over was no longer just a secret. She had become his enemy. Fatima wanted to intervene, but she knew interfering could put her in the same line of fire. For the first time in years, fear replaced jealousy. As she lay awake that night, the palace felt heavier, quieter, like it was holding its breath for what everyone knew was coming. The kind of silence that always comes before something burns. The message came late in the evening. A simple invitation from Sheikh Khalid asking Maria to meet him one last time. He promised peace, closure, and privacy, saying he wanted to end things like adults. The tone was calm, almost tender, and Maria, exhausted from months of tension, convinced herself it was finally over. She told Lena she was going to meet him at a luxury desert resort 2 hours outside the city, a secluded place known for its quiet dunes and private villas. Lena begged her not to go, but Maria's pride drowned out the warning. She arrived just before sunset, the desert painted gold, the silence almost too perfect. Khalid greeted her with a warm smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked different, calmer, collected, unnervingly composed. They sat across from each other, wine glasses between them, the air thick with things unsaid. Then, he pulled out a tablet and pressed play. The sound of her own voice filled the room, laughing, confessing, whispering the kind of things no one was ever supposed to hear. Her chest tightened. He had copies. She realized he had been watching her just as she had watched him. The power shifted instantly. Maria's confidence melted into panic as he spoke softly, his words too measured, too final. She tried to reach for her phone, but his hand stopped hers, firm and cold. He told her that love built on lies always ends in truth, his version of it. As the sun disappeared behind the dunes, Maria felt the weight of isolation settle in. There were no witnesses, no cameras, no escape. She had come believing she still had control, but she was sitting across from a man who had already decided how their story would end. And the desert, vast and empty, seemed ready to bury whatever came next. That night, the desert was eerily still, the kind of silence that felt alive. Omar sat in the parked SUV on the outskirts of the resort, his chest tight with dread. The sheik had dismissed the rest of the security team, insisting he needed privacy for a personal matter. Omar had followed anyway, keeping his headlights off, knowing deep down that something irreversible was about to happen. From a distance, he saw the sheik's vehicle parked near an isolated dune, its headlights cutting across the sand like twin blades. Two figures stood outside, Khalid in his pristine white kandura, and Maria, her silhouette trembling against the wind. Their voices carried faintly through the air, sharp and broken. Then there was silence. Moments later, Khalid moved back toward the car, his steps slow, deliberate, almost detached. Omar saw him open the trunk, remove a red canister, and walk back toward the spot where Maria stood. A few seconds passed, then a flash of orange burst through the darkness. Fire swallowed the desert air, roaring and violent. Omar's heart pounded as he watched the sheik stand before the flames, motionless, his expression unreadable. The heat shimmered, reflecting off his calm, empty eyes. When it was done, he turned, dropped the canister, and walked back to the car without a glance behind him. Omar forced himself to drive away before he was seen, the smell of smoke searing itself into his memory. He didn't sleep that night. The image of the fire replayed in his head. The moment power turned into evil, the moment loyalty became complicity. By dawn, there was nothing left in the desert but ash, a charred phone half melted into the sand, entire tracks leading back to the sheik's estate. Maria Dela Cruz had vanished from the earth, and the only witness was too afraid to speak. When Maria Dela Cruz didn't show up for work the next morning, Lina Ortega knew something was wrong. Maria was unpredictable but never silent, never offline, and definitely never unreachable. Hours turned into a full day, and her phone went straight to voicemail. Panic set in as Lina scrolled through Maria's last messages, the one saying she was going to meet the sheik for closure, followed by complete digital silence. Lina's gut twisted with dread. She called the sheik's office, pretending to be a friend arranging a surprise party, but his assistant coldly said he was out of the country. That lie confirmed what she already feared. Desperate, Lina reached out to Fatima Al Mansoor, the sheik's first wife, using a fake name at first. When Fatima heard Maria's name, she froze. She had been expecting something like this, but the confirmation hit her like a blade. Lina explained everything. The videos, the threats, the folder titled Asterisk for the wives. Asterisk. Fatima demanded to see it, and when Lina finally sent the files, silence filled the line. The recordings played one after another. Maria's laughter, the sheik's voice, confessions whispered in luxury suites. Fatima's hands trembled as she listened, tears mixing with fury. This wasn't just infidelity. It was exposure, humiliation, proof of his cruelty. Fatima realized Maria's so-called revenge had reached her, even from the grave. That night, she sat alone in her massive room, surrounded by silence and gold, and replayed the clips again and again, as if forcing herself to feel the full weight of betrayal. Lina couldn't shake the image of her friend's last words. If anything happens, you know what to do. Now she did. The recordings became her weapon, and Fatima became her ally. Maria might have disappeared, but her truth was alive, and it was about to burn everything the sheik had built. Fatima Al Mansoor had spent years protecting her husband's reputation, but as she listened to the recordings of Maria and the sheik, something inside her broke. Every lie, every whispered confession, every promise made to another woman stripped away the last bit of loyalty she had left. She didn't care about the wealth, the titles, or the illusion of power anymore. She wanted justice. Late one night, she used a private browser and uploaded one of the clips to an encrypted email, sending it anonymously to a London-based journalist known for exposing corruption in the Middle East. Within 48 hours, the story exploded. Headlines flooded social media. Asterisk. Royal sheik's secret affair exposed by leaked recordings. Asterisk. The internet devoured it. Some called it fake. Others whispered that the sheik had finally been caught. His publicists scrambled to contain the damage, labeling the recordings as deep fakes. But the accent, the background noises, even his laugh were unmistakable. His empire began to tremble. Business partners pulled back, family members distanced themselves, and the wives he once controlled now stood united, not out of love, but out of vengeance. The Sheikh's temper became volcanic. He stormed through the palace, smashing phones, firing staff, accusing everyone of betrayal. Fatima watched from a distance, calm and composed, her eyes cold as ice. For years she had been the obedient wife, the silent observer, but now she was the architect of his downfall. She knew she had lit a fire that couldn't be put out. As the Sheikh's name trended across global news, his empire cracked from the inside out. Investors withdrew, officials whispered, and his untouchable image turned toxic overnight. For the first time, Sheikh Khalid Al Mansoor, the man who burned others without consequence, finally felt the heat of his own destruction. Detective Armin Qureshi had seen his fair share of crimes buried under money and power, but this one felt different from the start. When he was called to a remote stretch of desert 2 hours outside Dubai, the air reeked of burnt sand and gasoline. What the forensics team found was chilling: fragments of bone, a melted phone, and traces of female jewelry. It was almost impossible to identify, but there was enough left to prove someone had died there. Rumors were already swirling about the Sheikh scandal, and now whispers of a missing woman were spreading through the city like wildfire. Qureshi knew better than to trust coincidences. He started digging quietly, interviewing hotel staff, security guards, and people who had worked for the Sheikh. Most were too afraid to talk, their eyes darting to the cameras in the room. But one man broke faster than expected: Omar, the loyal bodyguard. He looked exhausted, haunted, and when Qureshi pushed him just enough, the truth began to spill out in fragments. Omar admitted he had followed the Sheikh that night to the desert, that he'd seen the fire, that he'd known what was happening but hadn't stopped it. The guilt was eating him alive. Qureshi recorded every word, but he also knew that going after a man like Sheikh Khalid Al Mansoor was like declaring war on an empire. Still, the evidence was stacking up: surveillance gaps, phone records, deleted GPS data, all pointing to something premeditated. The Sheikh's money bought silence, but Qureshi had something money couldn't erase: facts. When the DNA results came back and confirmed the remains belonged to Maria Dela Cruz, the case shifted from rumor to reality. The detective knew the next step would shake Dubai's elite to its core. The untouchable Sheikh was no longer a rumor. He was a suspect. The arrest happened just before dawn, quiet and clinical, like a surgical strike. Detective Armin Qureshi led a team of officers to the Sheikh's coastal mansion, the kind of place guarded by stone lions and silence. The Sheikh was awake, sitting in his study with a cigar in one hand and a glass of scotch in the other, as if he'd been expecting them. When the officers entered, he didn't resist. He simply smirked and said, "Do you know who I am?" Qureshi did, but he also knew what he had: the recordings, the GPS trail, the witness statement from Omar, and the forensic match confirming Maria Dela Cruz's remains. For the first time, power didn't protect the Sheikh. Cameras caught the moment he was led out in white robes, wrists cuffed, his head low but his arrogance still intact. By midday, the world had the image plastered across every news outlet. The mighty Sheikh Khalid Al Mansoor, oil tycoon and royal associate, accused of murdering his secret lover. His legal team immediately called it a political stunt. His wives released a public statement claiming their husband was innocent, but Fatima stayed silent, watching from the shadows, her expression unreadable. The trial began weeks later under heavy media pressure, every seat in the courtroom filled, every word documented. The Sheikh denied everything, calling Maria a manipulator, claiming the evidence was fabricated by jealous enemies. But the digital trail told a different story: voice notes, timestamps, payment transfers, everything perfectly aligned. When Omar testified, the room froze. His voice cracked as he described the fire, the screams, the silence that followed. The Sheikh's composure faltered for the first time. For years, he had believed himself untouchable, but the courtroom was his new desert, and this time, there was nowhere left to hide. The day of the verdict felt heavier than any storm. The courthouse was packed, cameras flashing like lightning, reporters elbowing for a glimpse of the man who once ruled Dubai's elite like a king. Sheikh Khalid Al Mansoor sat in the defendant's box dressed in his finest white kandura, trying to hold on to the illusion of control. His face was expressionless, but the dark circles under his eyes told a different story. Across the aisle sat Fatima Al Mansoor, veiled and composed, and beside her was Lina Ortega clutching a photo of Maria Dela Cruz. Two women from completely different worlds, bound together by one man's destruction. The courtroom buzzed with tension as the judge entered and silence fell. The evidence had been overwhelming. The voice recordings, the financial transfers, the forensic match, and Omar's confession. The defense had tried to paint Maria as a blackmailer, but the prosecution had turned that narrative inside out, showing a woman desperate for acknowledgement, not money. When the judge began to read the verdict, Khalid's fingers tightened on the wooden bench, his jaw locked. The words came down like thunder: guilty of premeditated murder, obstruction of justice, and abuse of power. The sentence: life imprisonment. The room erupted. Cameras flashed, voices shouted, and Khalid's composure finally cracked as he yelled that the system was rigged. Guards restrained him, dragging him away as the crowd shouted for justice. Fatima remained still, her hands folded, her eyes cold and distant. Lina wept quietly, whispering a prayer for her friend. Outside the courthouse, people gathered, cheering as the news spread across the world: the untouchable Sheikh finally punished. For the first time, the women he had controlled were free, and Maria's truth, the one he tried to erase in flames, had risen from the ashes to bury him alive. Months had passed since the verdict, but the story of Sheikh Khalid Al Mansoor and Maria Dela Cruz refused to die. The world had turned their tragedy into a cautionary tale about power, love, and betrayal. Inside his cold, gray prison cell, the Sheikh sat alone, stripped of everything that once made him untouchable. No guards saluted him now, no servants waited on his word. His reflection in the tiny steel mirror looked like a ghost of the man who once ruled over others' lives. Every night, he heard the echo of fire in his dreams, the crackle of flames, Maria's laughter fading into the wind. On the outside, life had moved on, but the shadows of what he'd done clung to every headline. Fatima Al Mansoor rarely spoke to the press. She had taken her children and left Dubai, quietly rebuilding her life in Morocco, away from the flashing cameras and whispers of scandal. Lina Ortega became the accidental face of justice, giving interviews, telling Maria's story with a trembling voice and a fierce heart. She organized a foundation in Maria's name to support women trapped in abusive relationships, turning pain into purpose. One afternoon, Detective Armin Qureshi visited Lina, carrying a small sealed box recovered from the evidence room. Inside was Maria's phone and a half-melted bracelet. As Lina scrolled through the phone, she found one last unsent video. Maria smiling softly, saying, "If I disappear, tell them I loved too loud." Lina uploaded it that night, and within hours, it went viral. Millions watched as Maria's face filled their screens, her words echoing across the world. In that moment, she stopped being a victim and became a symbol, proof that even when silenced, truth finds its voice. And somewhere behind iron bars, the Sheikh finally understood what it meant to burn alone.